Welcome, fiends of the pod. I'm your host, film critic and comedian Nate Wyckoff, and I want to tell you that you can go to cultandclassicfilms.com to buy exclusive ultra low budget films directly from us. And I want to say this: money goes directly to the filmmakers with our films. We do not sell movies without paying the filmmakers. So you're doing good and you're getting an awesome product that is guaranteed to be so weird that all of your other friends will not believe it exists. But it does, and you can get it. You can also subscribe and get them delivered to your door every month at a big discount. Make sure you like and subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and for every like, subscription, and sale we make, we're going to bring back exploitation. I promise. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Welcome, friends and fiends of the pod, to another episode of Cult and Classic Films Podcast, the podcast where we bring you two thematically linked films, one mainstream and one cult, and talk about them both. I'm your host, film critic and comedian Nate Wyckoff, and I am pleasantly exhausted because I have been doing a lot of hosting of film screenings around, as well as Q&As with up and coming and established filmmakers. So we'll be having a lot of them come on the pod in the coming weeks. But today we are talking about Vampires Can Dance. Yes, that is not the movie. That is the theme for this pairing. And first, today we're going to talk about Abigail from 2024. But before we dive into that, let me go to our contributors. We have longtime contributor Tad Mastroianni. How you doing, Tad?
Waiting on the summer of my soul.
I'm glad you only stopped right there, because one more bar and we'd have had no monetization on YouTube. That 0.000001 cent would not have come through. Mandy Longley is also with us. How you doing, Mandy?
Wow. Oh, well, since Tad's ready to sing, I'm ready to dance.
Woo!
Woo! Yeah,
Woo!
let's go.
Well, I'm starting to have a sneaking suspicion you know why you gave this to me, Nate.
The movie?
A movie?
I don't know.
There's what you lured me into this movie with something. Take a guess.
Peacock subscription login.
Wow.
We'll talk
the
about
promise of fame and never-ending life.
We'll talk about it. So Mandy actually suggested this awesome pairing. We have this movie, and then those of us watching on YouTube, watch my lighting go terrible. And we're going to pair it with part two next episode with The Vampire and the Ballerina from 1960. That's a film that so many of us have never seen or heard of, that even I haven't seen it. So we're going to talk about that. It is a perfect combo because today's movie is about a group. This is not a spoiler, by the way, although anyone who's new to the podcast, we do spoiler reviews. I try to let you know, but if you're interested at all in the movie, after I give the description, go watch it, then come back and listen for us to analyze it and give you the behind the scenes details. So Abigail 2024 is about a bunch of somewhat disorganized criminals who are going to kidnap a little girl of a very, very rich man and try and, milk him for a bunch of money to get her back. Whether or not they actually intend to give her back depends on the person in the group. And the big news is that it turns out that the little girl, Abigail, is actually a vampire and proceeds to kill them and hunt them one by one. Is it a big setup? You'll have to watch and find out, or just keep listening. All right. Pretty simple setup to the movie. I think that we can all agree that little kids can be really creepy, which is why we have so many creepy children movies. I just recently watched a screening of Bad Seed with Patty McCormack from the 50s. And that's, everything from that on, from, Good Son, Children of the Corn, Village of the Damned, The Children, which we reviewed here a couple years ago. Kids are creepy. And this one is also creepy. The difference is that because Abigail is a vampire who's enjoying her job of torturing and killing these people, she's actually got that kind of monster charm that we get when we get sort of that Freddy Krueger. Like she's not Freddy Krueger. She's not a pun master, but I found her to be likable, and it's also sort of helpful that you don't really root for the main characters much, especially at first, because you're like, there are a bunch of people who are trying to get money by kidnapping a child. Although I think we can all at this point in time uh, hold no pity for the 1% in this, but perhaps kidnapping a small child is probably not the way to go. Okay, Mandy, you set up this pairing. What were you expecting? Like, what drew you to watch Abigail in the first place, and what did you get once you saw it?
I think it like just popped up somewhere on my social media, or someone mentioned it to me at some point, and I was like, first off, how do I not know that there's a new ridiculous vampire movie coming out this year, or came out this year? It just like slid under the radar completely, and I was extremely pissed off that I had just missed all of the anticipation of watching trailers and then actually getting to see it when it first released. So I was like, what? I of course wanted to watch it right away as soon as I found out about it. And I was expecting some kind of ridiculousness. The previews give you a good idea of like the setup and like world building and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't too much of a surprise of what the plot was going to be, but I really did enjoy some of the twists and turns on the vampire lore, how they set the house up, like what like the escape path was, and like that kind of stuff for this
Mm-hmm.
movie, because it was kind of cool too that it was also sort of like cabin in the woods esque, that like you
Mm-hmm.
were like, how could they escape? They were trying to escape. What's the next way she's going to attack them? What are her powers? Like you get to, it was a nice, well developed, like scripted movie. I felt it was a fun ride. So I hope that was what it was going to be, but you never know going into
Very
these, because
true.
it could just be a terrible train wreck and disappointing. But what I actually got was very entertaining, um, like horror slasher vampire film with a little girl ballerina as the main character. And they really stuck to it. They didn't like, it wasn't just like a disguise. Like she was into it as the
Yes,
ballerina vampire. Like, like
totally.
that was her character. So I was psyched that they didn't, that wasn't just for the poster or for the preview to like suck you in to get to watch the movie, and then they like dropped it as soon as like the premise, like act one of the movie was over, and then they move on and she's just like being a creepy little vampire, whatever.
Yeah,
Yay.
they gave her like a chance to actually be a character, right? Like
Mhm.
which was kind of nice. It's interesting because we've had a string, like vampires have definitely had a sort of return to favor lately, and it's because I think of some decent movies. That I did a short review of The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which was from Universal, and a sort of re-envisioning of the early portion of Dracula, where he travels via coffin in a ship to the States. And it was a lot, it was alien on a ship, but the Dracula that they used was very monstrous, and the practical effects were good. So I gave that high marks. And then of course we had the sort of comedic take also from Universal of Renfield with Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Holt, which and Aquafina, which I found absolutely fantastic and a delight. Um, and if you haven't seen it and you're a big fan of, you know, oldie Universal Dracula, give it a watch, because his Karloff, Nick Cage really pulls the old stars into his vision and his performance, and it's kind of one of those things where Nick Cage is at his best even in this tiny role. So it's a lot of fun. And so, but we also have had some misses. We've had The Invitation from 2022, which I thought was abysmal. Um, I do see one parallel that we can talk about later with this movie and that one. But this movie, I believe some of the producers also did Megan, which was better than I expected it to be, which was kind of nice. Again, though, similar problem, which we'll talk about later, because I don't want to talk about it yet. Tad, what you you said that I chose this for you for a reason. I have no concept because I actually didn't choose it. What
Uh,
what
are
what
you
uh what
are
were you
you
expecting versus what did you see?
are you telling me that you didn't go, you didn't watch this movie, hear a Danzig song and go, Tad's gonna fucking love this.
You know what's funny? I didn't even think of it. No, I did
You
not.
didn't think of the Danzig song towards the end of the movie?
I don't even remember it, to be honest. What was it? Which one was
Wow.
it? If it wasn't Five Finger Crawl, I don't remember.
Whatever. But yes, I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled for a movie that just kind of throws a random Danzig song. Once again, Danzig, good job. You made a movie, you didn't throw your own fucking songs in a movie that you made. Good job.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
interesting, I will say that was it Death Rider in the House of Vampires is finally getting the release from Cleopatra Records on Blu-ray. So get ready.
I can't
Enjoy.
wait to actually watch the movie not bootlegged so that I can
I
laugh at it all over
I
again.
don't know. So I have to say, I mean, this is off topic, but uh
What if the
I
quality's not better than the bootleg?
oh
That'd be even
well.
funnier and on that would be on brand.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was really nice to see him having fun in the movie, and it was great to see his girl Ashley Wisdom doing actually a kind of a really great bang up job as in her supporting role. But I enjoyed Veronica more, I think, but only because Veronica is to me it is beyond a train wreck. Like it is actually, it is like meeting someone who's having a normal conversation with you, but their body parts are falling off as they're talking and they're refusing to acknowledge it. Like it's
You're
that kind of mesmerizing, like you don't want to look away, even though you know that this is the most insane absurdity that there is.
you're
And
not wrong.
you know,
Veronica is a how did this happen? Whereas Death Rider is I understand how this happened.
very, very
Like
accurate. Yes.
Veronica is just on a different level. That's why we reviewed it twice.
Yes, we did.
Anyway,
And Devin
but
Sawa, shout out. It was really great to see you in there as well. And I appreciate that everybody gave it like their all. And of course, um, you know, yeah. Anyway, some really some
so
really great stuff.
all
Um,
right.
yep.
Now that I've segued because I had to talk
Kansas
about
Bowling is who I was thinking of. Nice to see her in the background too. Okay, Tad.
the I was surprised. I'll admit it. This I enjoyed this thoroughly. I watched it with the wife, and it was thoroughly entertaining all the way through. In fact, I gotta give this movie credit. Very well paced because so much happened in the first half hour of the movie. I had to pause because we had to do something. And then I went, oh my God, only a half an hour has gone by. And I actually have a coherent plot, characterization. Great. The only real problem I had with the movie in the first third of it was that it's kind of and I don't know if this is a budgetary constraint or anything, but it is following that kind of trend that I've seen in media for the past 15 years. There isn't enough color.
Mm,
Help me out here, Nathan.
right.
Like the
Yeah.
whole first third of the movie is very muted colors,
It's the
almost
Wachowski
fluorescent.
syndrome.
Yeah,
The
I
difference is the
hate it.
Wachowski sisters used it to an effect for a reason. The Matrix is green heavy because it's supposed to trigger your idea of old green screen computers. Um,
Monochrome monitors. Yes.
exactly. So it's like there's a reason for it. Whereas,
I
um,
just don't know
you
what
know,
people are, what the point of what people are doing now is because there are so many movies from ages before we were born that are just exploding with color when they don't even need to be, but they are because it kind of draws your eye and people can use that color to tell a different story that subconsciously you're not even realizing it. And movies don't seem to do that anymore. It's kind of like I don't know. I go back to Army of the Dead and I go, wow, this movie's ugly. I mean, that movie had a lot of other fucking problems that I absolutely hated, but it's just that thing. Like,
you just
where's
have an
the
innate
color?
dislike of
I I
Zack Snyder.
it fucking sucks. Let's move on. I know that's my catchphrase, but um I'm only giving this movie that one black mark. The characterization was fantastic. Even though remember we were talking what was that movie that I had the same issue with? Cocaine Bear. Remember
Mm.
how I said I loved redeemable assholes? This movie is full of it. Every character is kind of a redeemable asshole. They're on the cusp. They don't have to be an asshole for
Except
the
for our
rest
big
of the
baddie.
movie.
Our big baddie is not. In
I
fact,
don't
he
know.
unredeems himself.
I don't know. I didn't get enough. Like big baddie shows up at the end, and I'm just
No,
like,
I don't consider it. So, okay, this isn't even a spoil. I mean, I guess it's a spoiler. So, okay, so I enjoyed this movie a lot until the ending. So it's the same. Megan had some weakness at the end, but the ending overall was I thought fine.
did you just say Megan?
Yeah, because I'm getting there.
Oh,
Some
okay.
shared
I haven't
production.
seen Megan yet.
Okay, so you know what? Maybe we'll cover Megan. If anybody wants us to cover Megan, we because we've got some great robotic doll stuff we can pair with that.
I wanted to watch that.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll put it on the docket. Um, so, but the Invitation was the vampire one from 2023 that was abysmal in this regard. The ending, while that had the worst ending, Abigail's ending to me was a big black mark, because the problem is with an ending, it is the last thing you see. So when you kind of do something that's not the best decision, it really does, it affects your perception. It shouldn't affect the rest of the film, but it does, because you can't unsee it, right? It's like if you watched how a hot dog was made, then you're never going to eat it again, right? I don't have that problem. I'll eat the hot dog. But as far as film goes, it is hard. The reason is, and if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, just go see it, pause us, come back. We'll be here. So at the end, Abigail and our lead, Joey, played by Melissa Barrera, they defeat the guy you think might turn out to be a redeemed guy, Dan Stevens' character Frank, who does not, and he tries to be the ultimate baddie, a la the end of the first Blade film, but he's defeated, and then Abigail's daddy shows up, who is Dracula. I The shift in tone and the stopping of the plot in this most direct, extreme way was profoundly so. The end of the movie is Melissa Barrera's character walking out the front door, being let go essentially by Dracula because of Abigail, and she just looks completely confused and dumbstruck, staring into space, and then just gets in a truck and then puts doesn't she put a lollipop in her mouth that other character had?
Correct.
It was irrelevant. It was supposed to be a callback, but it had no connection. I'm sorry, it didn't. I don't know if that ended up on the cutting room floor, but whatever.
She didn't she have the candy like the whole
In the beginning
time?
of the movie.
Because they were
Oh,
like, she's like, they're like, they called her out for being an addict because she had the candy.
Yeah, I
And
don't,
that's the thing
but
that addicts
what's
do is like you've got the candy and like she,
yeah,
and then it
but
was like, I don't know,
what
I
is
think
the
they
link?
were they trying to like link it to her having the kid? Because
She's
they
supposed
were
to
Nathan.
like,
have, yeah, maybe, but she's supposed to have
and
made a
then,
change, right? She's supposed to
Nathan,
have had a
hold
character
on a
development.
second. There is a parallel here, and
mm,
whether it worked
Barrett.
or not is fine. But the end of the movie is literally making the point that she was too much of a coward to actually communicate with her own son, who she essentially abandoned. Villain father, essentially abandoned. He shows up at the last second. It's kind of that parallel thing. Does that work on a narrative level? Yes. Did it work in the movie? I don't know. For me, it kind of worked,
From
but
a
it was kind
structure,
of
it
like,
works, but there's literally no indication
mm,
in the plot, dialogue, or actions. And the other thing is, you can't give us the same thing that you gave us at the beginning and have it cue a change in the character. It doesn't work
mm,
that way. If she'd had candy the whole time and then she's gonna put it in her mouth and she throws it out the window, a la
yep,
quitting smoking from
yeah,
Constantine, then that's a
hmm,
change. But there's no, it was a complete lack of, and this is where I don't know. I would hazard to say that it's probably a problem in the script and the directing, because these script writers and directors have worked together before, in fact, and so has a
mm,
lot of the cast, like Melissa Barrera. They did the 2022 Scream and Scream 5 or 6, whatever it is. To be honest, listeners, you may know this. I may have let this slip. I think Scream is incredibly overrated all the way through, and I have no sympathy for any failures in that franchise. Sorry, not great. So I'm sorry if you're turning us off right now. I
I'll agree with
apologize.
I'll,
Um,
I'll
but
agree with
anyway,
that.
so this to me is better than their previous films. However, it didn't work for me, and the confusion on her face when she walks out is only mirroring the confusion of what the hell just occurred, because it had nothing to do
mhm,
with the film. Also, it didn't help that the caginess of Alisha Weir plays Abigail. I think she does a great job. It's so hard to get young actors that can actually carry a character like this in an adult film. I think she did great. But her caginess as to the actual relationship made it seem almost like there was something more hidden. Like my wife Corinne and I saw this, she's a huge vampire buff. She said something that I was getting an inkling of, which was it almost seemed like she was one of Dracula's wives, not his daughter, which is utterly disturbing, very Anne Ricean. But then that's totally thrown away when she actually is a daughter, and he thought it would be fun to be a dad. That's so weird. It also is not played out. Like, he does come back, he's an absentee father, but because I get what you're saying, there's a cool idea in the only present father being a literal monster, but it's completely absent from the entire film until it's like they shoved a Taika Waititi film right into the end and tried to say, look at this great idea, and you're like, well, no, we just had, I think, a lackluster fight with a villain that is not as cool as Abigail. So I don't know why we had that, which was another issue, but I would have let it go. You can have a just serviceable fight at the end of a movie and still make it a decent movie. Let's look at Iron Man. And you know what I mean? So you kind of, that, it just completely broke down everything that just occurred. And it took Joey's character, who actually had become sort of, a final girl in her own right. It took away any sort of character progress from her, because all of a sudden she is literally not in the movie. I mean, yes, they show her on screen, but she's standing there while an entire scene takes place around her and then leaves when she's been a driving force for the plot the entire movie. It's just a weird change. It was like they were married to this idea, and we never should have seen Dracula. And if we did see Dracula, it needed to not be this Dracula.
I agree with that, in that it was to me it kind of was a strange decision, and I was kind of surprised that they actually went that route. Because I wouldn't be surprised if the beginning and the end is exactly what they had in mind, and some of the stuff that they came up with in the middle kind of mucked that up, and they're like, well, we're committed to this ending, so we're gonna make it happen. Because the whole that end fight kind of just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, I mean, there is a reason why I was just like, this is, I got the Kirsten Dunst vibes a little bit, because my wife and I were having that conversation. I'm like, you turn somebody when they're young, they're going to stay young forever. That's that aspect of the vampire thing.
And I like the idea, become a monster, right? Because
Yeah.
they age, but they're still a child, and there's no possible. I mean, why would you have any love for the world when you literally you've been cursed to a potential torment for eternity?
You have been essentially yanked out of the world, but you still have to kind of watch it progress without you in a way. I get that. At the same time, the humor, I did enjoy a lot of the humor in it, but I also got the Blade vibes, and I actually was intrigued, because I'm like, if only we could get a new Blade movie that was at least semi decent like this. Because although at the same time, do we need to have a fight scene at the end of every goddamn movie?
No, we don't.
No, we don't. Why does this have to happen every time?
Why it hits you like Blade? It's not just because there's a guy who wants to become the ultimate vampire all of a sudden. It's literally in the same setup. It's every single thing is like that is based off a video game fight. It's a big open room, and you're just, and it's tiring. You know what? I'm totally all for it in Blade 2. Yes, I'm a Guillermo del Toro fan. I'm very much looking forward, speaking of vampires, to his Nosferatu, as well as Doug Jones in Nosferatu Symphony of the Night. Going to be great. Looking forward to them both. And people out there, if you get a chance to see Silent Synced, the Nosferatu on the big screen that they're playing right now, where they have cut and mastered two Radiohead albums to it for the soundtrack. Very cool, super fun. Check it out. But that worked because he fully went into the video game concept. Plus, they played with the entire environment. The walls were used, and yes, it was also 3D, so they weren't tethered to the same things, even if it doesn't hold up as well as it could otherwise. But it's like you said, it's tired. It's tired, and it forces them to be like, how can we up this another ante? There's a stake through the leg, all these things. But the problem is, like, a movie like this that is mainstream, you will never compete with, especially in a fight, with the brutality that films not focus grouped, not tethered to a certain limiting monetary field as
Mhm.
mainstream national release film, you're never going to compete. So you have to
And
be better.
yeah, you don't have to. That's the whole point. One of the biggest subversions, God, I hate to sound like a fucking nerd, but one of the best things that ever happened to
Sorry, I hate
me
to tell you,
as
you're on a
someone,
cult film
I
podcast.
know. As someone who played video games, one of the best things I ever saw was in BioShock 2 when there was no boss fight at the end. I was like, yay, I actually ended a game where I didn't have to fight a fucking boss and there was actually some sort of either environmental issue or a character issue. I hate to keep talking about something about Star Wars, but that's the cheat code, right? What's the end of the Return of the Jedi? It's not a boss fight. The whole
Mm-mm.
fight between him and Vader is not the boss fight. That is a
No,
character development. Like the Emperor doesn't stand up and suddenly start shooting lightning everywhere and going ha ha ha, and Luke doesn't fight the Emperor.
no,
The
that's the
whole
thing,
thing,
right?
yeah, the whole thing is a a character maturing and dealing with a situation that isn't just fucking throwing swords and lightning around.
It's what
And I
it's what
wish there was more movies that would do that.
it's what our transphobic author friend J.K. Rowling, she's not a friend, but did and tried to do, I think, in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, right? The ending is literally love and the stone defeats Voldemort. Like it really is so bizarrely a non-ending, but I think that was the intent. It's a battle, but it's not a battle, and it could have been done differently. It should have been done differently. So your Return of the Jedi, I think, is a perfect parallel, right? The other one is the ending of the book, the original ending for Exorcist 3 Legion, where there is not an exorcism scene
Oh,
because the character who would be exorcised is is begging to be released. He does not want to be there. So when he finally goes, it's like it is a blessing. It is actually this it's a cathartic release moment that gives the audience this, that true ending. Whereas an out of nowhere exorcism that's got peeling skin and all this stuff, it just doesn't make sense.
I love
Um,
that.
I do too. So it's a very first episode, Culting Classic Podcast. Go check it out.
That's right.
So anyway, it's I agree with you. I think that was a weakness. Now, I'm not against the boss fight though. If you have it, it should have been better. Here's what I would have done, because you need nothing about the ending was a surprise or a twist in the way that they pretended it was. Um, now Matthew Goode played Dracula. They credit him, I think, his father, but come on, it's Dracula. He played Stoker in the series too, and he also we'll just have to say, go back to Zack Snyder. He was Ozymandias in Watchmen. Uh, it it would have been much more interesting if they had more effectively drawn the parallels between the different parent-child relationships. Like you said, Joey is sort of the heroine, but we kind of get the impression that maybe she will reconnect with her son after going through this because she's been changed by Abigail's perspective. Whereas Frank did not, right? He took the opposite way for himself and was paid the price of being killed. Well, I like the idea then of having, what does Abigail think about this? What is her change? Because she's the
Mhm.
child who is seeing this. She's seen both sides now and her problematic relationship with her father. Well, how about he comes back and he hasn't been there for an eternity? He's just been basically sending, spoiler, he's been sending people to this house with her for her to kill them because of his, why he's running a criminal empire. I don't know the purpose of that. He should have just saved. He's the only entity in the world where you could save your way out of poverty because he doesn't die. Um, you could what about her actually turning and killing her father? Like that would have been a very big change because she then makes her decision. Her father is not Joey, right? Her father
Mhm.
is not the character that is actually going to come back. He's self-serving and he is the Frank, and she just killed Frank. She can then become
Mhm.
the power, and that would have been great because then we really do have an arc for everyone. Everyone who didn't get an arc is dead. Dracula, no arc, dead. Frank, no arc, dead. Joey, progress. She lives. Abigail, we get an arc for her all of a sudden. Now she's taken control and she has removed herself from needing the attention and approval of this figure that she will never get it from, her father figure. That would have been a fantastic scene. You could have thrown it at the end credits. It would have changed the whole thing, without changing without changing the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So that would have been much more interesting to me. But I think you're right, Tad. I think you're getting to the point where the ideas were there, but somewhere along the line they were not carried through or they were dropped. Because as it is,
Happens.
the whole beginning to the up until that end area, we have this what I thought was just like a super fun movie where we just get scene after scene of Abigail essentially pulling out new vampire stops that we didn't expect. Like my favorite scene is probably when they've got her down, they're holding her down and they're tying her and they're like, oh, they finally got her. And then she starts to levitate and like tied up and starts kicking and they're trying to get her down. Like
She's
that's,
fucking flying.
it's a great, like, and it's also great from her character angle too, because she's holding back the whole time, right? Which is
Yeah.
what you kind of expect. She's playing with her food. Um, and I loved moments like that. And there are several. Uh, the cast is pretty strong. This my favorite scene of all, and my favorite standout acting moment is from Catherine Newton, who played Sammy, um, the tech nerd. Who why she was there is perhaps the biggest question because she's like she seems to have no evil or like opportunistic bone in her body. She's just like a normal
Just
girl.
bored.
Um, yeah. So and of course people will recognize her. She plays Cassie Lang in Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania, which was unfortunate, in my opinion. I mean, yes, it's watchable, but she was Lucy. She was Lucy in Pokemon Detective Pikachu. I think best role probably she was Millie in Freaky. So she's been in a lot of interesting stuff, and mainstream horror goers will definitely know her. But she plays this character who is turned by Abigail as a puppet rather than another vampire. And she has this crazy dance scene that mimics Abigail's dance, and it returns to the idea that she's like this wannabe ballerina, whether she's good or not. I don't know. I'm not a ballerina. It looks impressive to me, but I have zero coordination and I'm overweight. So who knows, right? But it was great. Her acting was great because she had to change completely. Her character switch was just at the right moment. We know it's probably coming, but we don't expect it to come out as dramatically as it does. And then her exploding when the light hits her is just I love that. Like that was my favorite. I enjoyed every second of that. And it's one of those scenes where one person is given a chance to shine and they blow it away. She stole a huge chunk of the movie with that tiny scene for me because I was still thinking about it afterward.
That's
Um,
funny because that's the scene where the Danzig song is, Nathan.
oh, see, I was too entranced with the scene but it worked, right? It must have worked. It
It
fit.
worked fantastic. They picked the right song for it, and I am absolutely disappointed in you that you just whiffed on a Danzig song
I
in the middle of
I
a movie.
I didn't. I'm a Catherine Newton fan, so what are you gonna do? Um, and this is what made me one because it wasn't Ant-Man 3, sorry. And I liked Ant-Man 1 and 2, just saying. Kevin Durand did a great job as the big Quebecian. Um, he played Blob and Wolverine Origins. Um, he was in one of the Resident Evils at least, if not more. I can't remember. He's been in a lot of genre stuff. He was Butterfly Effect. He was in Legion. So his character is interesting, mostly because he looks, especially in this movie, like a super swole Elon Musk. And
God
so
damn it.
because of that, I kept expecting him to be pure evil like Elon Musk, and and he isn't. Um, and and so that sort of I actually it's weird because it's literally not his fault. I think he did a great job with this character because this character is like he's not a bad guy, but he's also not a good guy. He follows orders from a bad guy. Yet I was so distracted by his parallel appearance to Elon Musk that I actually was like distracted. It took me out of the movie. It's so weird, and I feel so bad because it has nothing to do with him at all.
I thought it
Um,
was weird, but at the same time, the way he talks and especially towards the end of the movie, did you notice that he kind of sort of adopts like a Arnold Schwarzenegger as kind of accent?
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder how he would do in a Terminator movie.
He would be a great Terminator. He really
Hmm,
would. I love
ideas.
that. Let's
Except,
retcon Dark
should
Fate, please.
I don't think we should do any more Terminator movies though.
Oh, I do.
I think
I
we're
want a
done.
Terminator movie. Here's the thing about Terminator, just as a sidetrack. I really did not like Dark Fate. They tried to be like, let's look, Halloween did an interesting resurgence sequel. Let's do this. Well, I think it was awful. I really, really was upset. I did not like it. I did not enjoy it. Linda
Nobody
Hamilton
liked
did not
that.
enjoy it. I actually know one person who it was their favorite one, but I'm not going to call him out.
What?
I know, but hey, look, we all have weird things, but that's not one of them for me. The nice thing about Terminator is that you almost you have to try not to retcon Terminator by making another Terminator. Every single Terminator retcons other Terminators by
It
sheer
dares you to try and
yes,
keep it all
because
together because you
because of the
fucking can't
nature
do it.
of the messing with the time stream back and forth. So, you know, I like that concept, and I had never thought of that, Tad, but I'm
You're
about ready to
welcome.
start pelting people with daily emails to get that because that's a brilliant idea. Okay. Um, Anybody else have a favorite scene that stood out?
My favorite scene was that scene. It had dancing, it had
Hmm.
Danzig.
It had
I
explosions of bodily
Yeah, I
bodies.
know, but I mean like I'm not
That was
impressed
good.
by that. I'm not impressed by
Well,
that anymore.
I'm not necessarily, you know what's the thing is? Here's the one thing. I agree, maybe I'm not surprised by it. It's not new by any stretch anymore, but I'm appreciative when they do it well, which was this was cut in such a way that you couldn't really expect it to hit. Even though you knew it was coming, it's it's instant mid-action, which is important because it's
There
like a
has to have
car.
been.
It's like when you're filming an actor from the side in a car and you're looking in the side mirror or the side windows right there, and another car comes and hits them, they T-bone them. You know it's coming because we've seen it a million times now, but it doesn't mean that it can't still be shockingly jarring as a jump scare.
As if
So,
you do it well, yes,
correct.
absolutely.
And I thought that her explosion was done well because you know it's coming, you know she's not going to survive. It's clear that she's not a vampire, really. She's not a full vampire. She's clearly a puppet of some kind. Um, but her pop was satisfying to me. Even though I was sad because then we don't get her character anymore. Even though this was the full purpose of her character. Most of the characters in here are simply fodder, and so they're given that the reason why the heist concept worked for me to set everything up is that heist is all about stereotypical characters, like Rick and Morty nailed it, like you son of a bitch, I'm in. Like it's the
Yeah.
deal. Um, and so because of that, you don't need to set up many of the characters. You can just develop the ones you want to develop. And then when they die, you can give them something unique, right? Like Durand has the sort of hero moment almost, right? Or the moment where I don't even know if you call it a hero moment, but kind of the choice moment. And then uh, 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 I forget what her character's name is even at this point. Catherine Newton Sammy. She has the moment where it's through no power of her own, but she does a turn because of Abigail. You get these people that have moments. You don't give everyone a moment. Angus Cloud, this was, I believe, his last role before he passed away, unfortunately. Doesn't really get a moment. He's fodder, but he does get a little bit of character development in the opening. William Catlett as Rickles, he does not get any moments. He's one of the first to go. They set him up to be a hero. And then, it's instant, which is also intentional, obviously, right? Like it's supposed to be a shock moment. It's a little bit of a shock. You know she's going to kill everybody, but you don't expect him because of the way they're setting him up to be in charge. You don't
Are
expect him
you
to go
sure
anyway.
about that, Nate? Because you know that rule about how the black man is usually
Sure.
one of the first to go.
And he was. I mean, to be
I
fair,
can't believe they did it.
they did it. I know. Well, here's the thing. You really have to be conscious of these things when you make a movie these days because it's so ingrained into our heads that even if you are not even if you're not, I mean, of course, hopefully we're not intentionally racist, but even if you don't think you're subconsciously socialized racist, it's so common. Even Quiet Place 2, people loved. I thought it was okay, and I love Cillian Murphy. Um, but all the black characters die. They show up instantly to die. And it's noticeable now. So you have to be aware of it because now people are like, well, it's just supposed to be random, but that's it. It's not random. It's not random. If it were random, then the one token person of color would not be the first to die. They would just as likely be the person to live.
Nathan, would you be okay with it if he took the role going, haha, that's funny?
I
If he
mean,
went, yeah, I'm signing on because I think that's funny.
I
Would you
mean,
be okay with it then?
to be honest, no, because it's that whole idea. It's like, it's oh my God. Listen, folks, as Corinne, my wife, walked by, she's like, I said that is true. She did. Um, it's like being a stand-up comedian, folks. People think that going to like an open mic at like a big restaurant or bar or something or stage, they're like, oh, this is a comedy show. No, no, it's not. It's an open mic. It's very different. Even good comedians go there to test out material. And 90% of everybody, 90% generous, 90% of everybody there are not good comedians, at least not yet. So you will get the most painful, excruciating night. Never go to date night unless you like cruel, cruel nature. Uh,
Ugh.
and the reason I think of this is because what you said, if he thought it was funny and he took it being aware
Mm.
or because of that, it's not okay because it's the equivalent of having a 20-something white girl walk up and go, I'm going to say the N-word in this joke, but it's okay because my friend who is black said I could. No, no, no. You can't.
I
You
think I've
can't.
played video games that have done that.
You can't. That's the thing. You can't though. Like, a better argument would be the discussion of whether or not Quentin Tarantino can write it in his scripts, right? And Jamie Foxx
Mm.
and Samuel Jackson and people do his movies and are like, yes, he can do that. It's a different scenario. I'm not going to defend or otherwise. I do not have a stake in the fight. I like Quentin Tarantino's films, but that's a better arguable point to me because it is a grayer area. He's writing other characters, whether or not he can write them with sort of a sincerity of understanding, that's another question. That's one you can argue. But yeah, the idea of, I mean, I'm not blaming then William Catlett. Like he can certainly do whatever he wants. That's the thing. It's not his fault. I would take the role too. It's like how I can't remember the guy that played Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. He's essentially played like a pedophile in like 10 movies. He's typecast as that. I don't blame him anymore. It's a paycheck. He has to take a role. What are you going to do? But it's not a great look. It doesn't make
Not a
people
great
go,
look.
yay.
You gotta get that money, man.
Yeah, you do Lovely Bones and you know that there's repercussions.
Oh, well,
So,
Mm.
Mandy, what was your favorite scene in the film?
I really like the well, I mean, like, I thought it was like the swimming pool scene, like not as like a whole scene, but I thought that was like they were like, oh, we are so screwed. There's
Yeah.
like a swimming pool full of dead bodies. Like this is not a one-off. Like oh shit. And then I liked how they thought like if they got to the control room, like they would have it made. So I think that was one of my favorite twists is when they get there and they're like, oh no, we're still so fucked.
It was that was a
And
good
then
scene.
there were some good reveals and stuff, and we did get that little character development from our lead where
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
calls her son. But but I like just the fact that they worked so hard to get there, and then they had like the rug pulled out from under them.
And it's
It's
that cabin
not
in the
working
woodsy
out.
moment, right? They're
Yeah,
doing what they're supposed to do. You're always supposed to
yeah,
get to the control room. And then,
yeah,
of course, it doesn't matter. Now, then, of course, for me, it became problematic because then we get the guy, like, I'm going to turn you if you help me, like, kill the. And I'm like, you're like, why would you do that? I thought he was messing with him. And then he
yeah.
actually does. And Frank kills him right away. I'm like, what was your plan? Like,
Right.
how did you even get to where you are in life to
Yeah,
make this mistake?
yeah,
But it as Tad said,
yeah.
the pacing is decent enough that you don't really sit
Right.
with it too much until after. It's like at most I cataloged it in the back of my head, like dumb,
Mhm.
explain. Um,
Yeah. But anyway, I really enjoy that. I remember like that stands out as one I enjoyed. I also liked her little ballerina stage
Me too.
scene when she was in
Yeah.
there. That was cute.
Corinne
Um,
was like, in what purpose is he renting out this entire giant theater for her to perform to no one? Um, it
yeah.
didn't bother in a way. So here's why it worked for me. It was setting up that she is completely alone
Mm,
because yes, her dad will pay for anything that doesn't cost him to be there, right? Which is
Hmm.
sort of why that ending without any sort of repercussion that he showed up didn't work for me. Um, also you're like he could afford this. He could pay for a couple of flipping vampires to show up there and watch her. I don't know.
Oh, I know. I
And
meant like in the kill house,
no, I
like her
agree.
little,
She has
yeah,
this little,
her
almost like
little,
a puppet stage.
yes,
And she
her
does
little
all of her
puppet thing.
movements.
She's like fucking with him. She's like,
Yeah, yes.
dude,
Like
dance
when she's
around.
controlling Sammy, like she's
Yeah,
in there, and that
yeah,
was a delight. We also get these cool
yeah,
overhead shots of her like throwing her head up and showing her bloody fangs. I like that she
yeah.
has like the mouth of sharp teeth, the Fright Night
Hmm.
mouth, versus just a couple of fangs. It makes her very monstrous.
Hmm.
Um, no, I thought she was great. We also have, I think I mentioned most of the main cast, but Giancarlo Esposito's in there too. I don't think he has a great role, but it is nice to see people that we know have some strong acting chops hanging around. So we'll go into the recommendations. I liked this movie. The ending was a super weak spot for me, but we still have Abigail in this cinematic world, and I'm hoping for a sequel. I do think we'll get a sequel, because I think she was fun. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see different scenarios. Um, I could
Oh, will
even
they have like a different actress who's the same age?
Well, at this point, she's at
Or
the
they,
age where she's going to be grown she's going to look different by the
yeah,
time we get to the new movie. It would be
yeah.
nice, I think, to actually stick with her, right? And have her,
Mm.
but see, that's the thing though. But we also don't really know. Yes, she's old, but do we really know? Like they could do anything they want. They used a lot of tropes, but they also added some caveats that are not in the traditional
Yeah,
thing. Have her play the character that's stuck in the house with her next time and have somebody else play. Like that would be fun,
like
right?
recast the same age actress but different actress and have a
Yeah.
cameo or like
Yeah,
yeah,
it would be
that could be good.
interesting.
Yeah.
Or you know what? Screw it. Do a crossover. Have a Megan Abigail movie. I'm whatever. At this
Mm.
point, just try something new. Just Jason versus Freddy. Do something. I'm interested in seeing it. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, I liked her character. I enjoyed it. You could actually do, if you got some good writers on it, you could do an
Hmm.
HBO series following
Hmm.
Abigail, and it would be serious and fairly dark. I mean, it could work. There's a lot more in there that could work. Go back and read Interview with the Vampire and pull it out there. Okay, so I recommend it. I'm looking forward to a sequel. Not perfect, but for a theater run vampire movie, I think this is more a win than a fail, which is nice. It's like, because like I said, Renfield, Last Voyage of the Demeter, and the upcoming Nosferatu films, which I'm very excited about. I think it's a good fit. Mandy, would you recommend Abigail 2024? If so, why and to who?
I would. It's super fun. It's cute. Like I said, like Nate said, it's not a complete epic fail. There's enough really good stuff in there. I didn't feel as strongly negative about the ending as they did. I thought the nice little clues that they put through about like her vampire dad, the like creepy paintings, sculptures, like that kind of stuff through the house. I thought that was fun. And then to have kind of the reveal at the end, have him show up. Um, but I just always feel like the endings are the hardest part of any story, and it's where we often see a lot of the struggle and
Right.
storytelling. But I give it a thumbs up. I would recommend it to horror film fans. Wow, it is late and I
It is.
can't do the words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't
horror film fans.
But
Uh,
here's one more weird thing. I know I'm talking over you again. Just chalk it up to being a white guy, which is
host.
true. Um, it's like, is it my imagination or was like the name of Abigail, of the guy that was supposed to be the killer, that was Abigail, that also her dad, did they give them like Spanish or Italian, very ethnic names as like their alter egos or whatever? Because that was weird, because I seem to remember the names were weirdly like non-white European. And I'm like, who is interacting with them in any way, shape, or form? I know not many people are, because that's kind of the point, right?
Mhm.
How they'd know they're vampires, whatever. But what a weird.
Was it supposed to make you feel like they were more mafia or
That's kind of
something?
that's what it was supposed to be. But I'm like, so you have like the whitest transparent people. I mean, you have Matthew Goode come in. His name is Good. He plays Puritans. He doesn't play anyone with a tan. Um, it was a very weird, that was a weird thing that I was like, I can't get that out of my
Yeah.
head. Um, strange. Anyway,
Okay.
sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's all right. Just recommend it to people who like horror movies, especially vampire ones that had some nice twists. It's always nice to see something a little bit different, different creative take on the age-old story of vampires.
Yeah, and I, if you want more, there have been some fun kid vampire ones, right? And I think um, my favorite was probably before this was probably Let the Right One In, the original. Even though I love Elias Codius, Casey Jones in the American remake, which was fine, the original Let the Right One In uh, film is like it's sort of like the unsettlingly realistic psychological idea of a child
Mhm.
vampire versus this one that's a lot more fun. Let's check that out.
Mhm.
And full disclosure, all when I talk over everybody when we record these, it is late and my Adderall is spent at this time.
Big-
I am like a
You
train
get
engine
spicy
that's
Nate.
yeah. I'm that train that's the HO scale that's fallen off the track and it's just got enough
Mhm.
traction on the board to just spin in circles.
Mhm.
Tad, would you recommend Abigail 2024? If so, why and to who?
Nathan, when I wrote Adderall Kid, did that song resonate with you at all?
A little bit, yeah. I actually did listen to that this week.
That's one of my
Um,
favorite songs that I
it's a good
wrote.
one.
Um,
There's
so
some good ones.
so yes, I recommend this. I actually really enjoyed this. I know that's not my usual, but I actually would recommend this to people who are not horror fans because frankly, one, I don't think it's a secret. I find the horror genre in general to be very tired at this point, like extremely tired. And this was kind of refreshing because it was less horror and really more just like a character film. I really enjoyed that. With some horror stuff, sure, but to me there's nothing that's going to beat the joy of watching vampires get ashed in Blade and 1 and 2 because that was the peak. We peaked with vampire stuff then when it came to just the pure special effects spectacle, but after that I
Sure.
kind of want something different. Um I liked this because I feel like this is a great movie for people who don't like horror to watch a movie that's sort of horror, but sort of not. It's kind of a thriller. It's not too gory. My wife was like, "Wow, this is really gory." I'm like, "Oh, you
That's
haven't
the
watched
director
nearly
said that
anything.
too. And I was like, the director said that it was their goriest film. And I'm like,
This
it's
is
not
not
that
gory.
gory to
God,
me. Um,
nothing. This is nothing."
Yeah, I didn't find it. It's interesting though that you say you're like to me horror is the most hackneyed because I think it's I've been listening again to the new audio version of this listened to Reddit many times to a Dance Macabre by Stephen King where he tries to talk through what horror is and why we consume it. And it's one of those things where I do think horror has not the most, but a heavy amount of hack material. But at the same time, it's also where the rare place where we get originality. Because I think of like romances, dramas, period pieces, every other genre I can think of action. None of those have the potential for originality that horror does. Because we like it's interesting because frankly, the vast majority of the few movies that you have given full props to, Tad, have been horror films on
I
here.
know. And
And
it's
so,
that's because those people have done something with it. You are correct.
yeah,
The problem is that when you have that level of freedom in a
sure.
genre, you
Yeah,
better
sure.
do something with it or I'm going to be bored as shit. Some of my favorite movies are horror films because someone did something in that and did something drastically different with it.
Or it's
And I
rock and roll
appreciate
zombie, which is different,
absolutely.
to be fair. Uh,
That movie is a wonderful train wreck. I would not call it a great movie in any sense of the
I
word.
know.
Remember what I said? I said this years ago. Horror is really fun to make and really boring to watch. I said that because we've made horror and it's a
Sure.
lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to study the people who have done it. It's fun to study the film, but sometimes for me watching it is a fucking chore. That's just me. Who cares what I think?
Uh, there's a movie out, and we're gonna have the filmmakers on here, and it's so we're gonna talk about it more. We're gonna review it, but it's on streaming right now. It's not on physical, but it will be. I believe it's called Mother, Father, Sister, Brother, Frank, and it is the most fun film about murder and dismemberment. I mean, it is just a joy. And that reminded me of it. It's this kind of like, that's what you're talking about, Tab, where it's a fun movie. And to put the fun back in any genre can be a struggle, especially when everything is so focus oriented on like, you know, how accessible is this?
Yeah, I
You
go
know,
back to it every time, but how fun is Terror Vision to watch? Do you
so
really
fun.
consider it a horror movie, even though it kind of is, but
You know what?
isn't?
Okay, yeah.
It's fun.
That's been one of my favorites that we've
Me
done.
too.
Yeah.
See, I heard somebody that hated that movie recently, somebody that was well
Oh,
respected. I'm trying to think of who it was, and it really
sad.
blew my mind. But oh, I know who it was. I won't call him out either at this
Mm.
moment. We'll see how they treat me later. I'm just kidding. Uh, yeah, so Dave. Well, Stephen King says this. He says horror is a small circle of fantasy, and fantasy is not limited to the sword and sorcery vibe. And I think that that's accurate. Terror Vision falls in fantasy close to horror, but not maybe
Mm.
quite there. But for ease, it's in the horror suburbs, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
film in the suburbs that is in the horror suburbs. So I think that's why we call it horror, because somebody who can't tolerate a horror film may be turned off by it.
I
And
mean,
somebody who only wants a horror film is going to find more of a comedy, almost
Mm-hmm.
that family horror film vibe.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Nathan, here's a quiz. What do you if you ask me what's my favorite horror film, what do you think I'd say?
Legion. E-
Never
Exorcist 3.
saw it. I don't know what the fuck you're talking
Exorcist
about.
3 is
Oh,
called
oh,
Legion.
oh. I mean, it's close, but you're almost there. But there's one movie that trumps that, and nobody would guess it because no one would think it's a horror movie, but I do. Sunshine.
Sunshine's a horror film. I'm gonna
Sunshine
come out and say
is,
that
but
100%.
most people think of it as a sci-fi film, but it's both
It's
because it's a
horror.
different kind of
Yeah.
horror, and it's
Well,
my favorite horror.
Ray Bradbury did that a few times too. It's like
Yes.
Alien. Is it a science fiction film or a horror film? It's both.
Yes.
It's
The
not
answer is
hard
yes.
sci-fi, but it's a horror film. Yeah, absolutely. And Sunshine, I believe Sunshine to me, it's even closer to horror in that it's because you could almost
Fucking
make the
Danny
argument.
Boyle won.
Well, yes, and you could. Hey, he also made Millions, right? And Slumdog Millionaire. So he's done his fair share of genre. But and I promised Jeff, who's not here today, that we will be doing Sunshine. So if anybody hasn't seen Sunshine or you've
Oh,
seen it and you want to revisit it
I will
with Chris
always
Evans,
rewatch it.
we will absolutely be watching Sunshine. In fact, if you have something you'd like
Is,
us to
is
pair it
that
with,
the sunshine that's like the spaceship into the sun?
yes,
Yes, that
Ah,
one.
okay. I
yes,
feel like there was another one that was similarly named, which was a very different movie.
Little
Like,
Miss
I don't know.
probably
Sunshine?
What?
Little Miss
No, Little Miss
Sunshine?
Sunshine is also amazing. That,
Sunshine
that's a
Cleaners,
that's a
Eternal
I don't
Sunshine of the
know.
Spotless Mind.
I
Um,
love that
Ah,
movie
so many
too.
like we could just have like a sunshine month, sunshiny month
it's true, we
theme.
could Sunshine on My Shoulder, the John
I
Denver
mean,
biopic.
we've already covered Eternal Sunshine though.
No, we didn't.
I did.
You talked about it, but you talked about a lot of films. Kidding. Uh,
That's what it counts.
you didn't talk about Eternal Sunshine that much. You talk a lot more about the science of sleep. Uh,
Oh, oh.
Anywho, that's Tad's favorite film. Everybody, thanks. I'm just kidding. He hates that film. All right, thank you all so much for coming. Check out Abigail if this sounded at all interesting to you. I think it's one of those movies too that is really great to watch with family members or friends who are not like huge horror buffs, but they'll go see something in theaters. It's fun. It's a fun movie. It's a good Halloween movie for people that don't really like to be scared, but they don't mind a little blood and action. And it plays with fun tropes. Please also watch Renfield. Watch if you want like more of a hard horror, watch Last Voyage of the Demeter. There's one dialogue chunk monologue that should be cut. It didn't work the way they wanted it to, but everything else is solid, especially the end. And there you go. Thanks so much. Please go to cultandclassicfilms.com. Check out our releases. Money from every sale goes to filmmakers who are making those movies, or when there's no filmmaker involved, then it will go to charity. So you're doing good, not just helping us continue, but you're helping creative people make movies that are not held down by any sort of system. I know I'm not trying to be the man, but you know. So thank you all so much. Please do that. Also, you can email us any requests, hate mail, anything like that to info@coltonclassicfilms.com. Tad's still waiting for that hate mail. I mean, the closest thing is Janice.click sending a farting video, but that was to Jeff. So it's not even
Yeah,
just, it's
yeah, I
just
didn't even
Tad.
get that.
It's just Tad adjacent. So anyway, to Blaze out as always is the Chud with All About Evil. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Cult and Classic Podcast. This podcast is important to me, but what's more important are the rights, privileges, and freedom from violence of everyone in this country and in this world. And that means supporting Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to make a donation, please go ahead and visit coltonclassicpodcast.com, where we have a list of places you can donate and help out. And please stay safe.